You're all set, Andreas.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Newton Conservation Commission meeting, July 21st, 2020. Item 1, call to order. Ms. Gibbons, please call the roll.
Ben Ancona III.
Here.
John Bashan. John, you're muted.
Here, sorry.
It's okay. Philip Block. John Casasanta.
Here.
Kathleen Marie Clark.
Here.
Ed Conway. Richard Leverrier.
Present.
Alan Paskowitz. Andrea Sadil.
Here.
Max Turgeon.
Thank you. So a point of order, I will seat Ben Ancona III for Commissioner Block this evening. Moving on to item 3, public participation on non-agenda items. Each speaker limited to 2 minutes. Is there anyone on the line who wishes to speak?
At this point, the individual doesn't appear to wish to raise their hand. If they do wish to speak, if they're using the application, they can open the panelist window at the bottom and lower their hand with that. Or if they're on their phone, they can use *9. I would say at this point, they're not interested.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 4, acceptance of meeting minutes from the regular meeting of June the 16th, 2020. Are there any additions or corrections at this time?
Can I say something, Andres?
Commissioner Bashan.
I didn't get a package with the minutes in it. Were we supposed to review them online? I'm sorry.
They were all sent via email
Okay.
along with the agenda, because that's all we had was the agenda and the minutes.
Okay. Well, I obviously don't have any objection to them because I did not read them, so I won't be voting on it, I guess.
Question.
Commissioner Laviere.
Yes, I noticed that the Peckham Farm project was listed as old business on the agenda. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be still new business or not. Obviously, that's not the minutes, but I just thought I'd bring that up.
All right, we'll discuss it at that under old business. We'll discuss that conversation. Are there any additions, corrections to the minutes at this time? Seeing none, can I have a motion to accept the meeting minutes from the meeting of June the 16th, 2020?
Motion from Richard.
Moved by Commissioner Laviere. Can I have a second? I need a second.
Second. I second that.
Who is that? Is that Commissioner Casasanta?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded by Commissioner Casasanta. All in favor?
Hold on a second, Mr. Chairman. I believe Ms. Clark has a question.
No, mostly, I just want to ask, can you hear me?
Yes.
Not that I care that I was the person who would second the acceptance, but are we raising our hand or are we just speaking out?
I've got a panel here. I cannot see you. I got a panel here on the list. So as you push the raise your hand button, I can see you on my panel here. Just your name. I don't see your, unless you speak, I see your face. I only see 3 people at a time.
Okay, I understand that, but I just want to also say that when I read the minutes, I just kept saying, I'm raising my hand, I'm raising my hand, I'm raising my hand. So my question is, are people using the raise your hand function, or are they just speaking in order to be heard?
They should raise their hand just to keep it in some kind of order, and we'll watch the screen for who has raised their hands, and we can call on them that way, just to keep it sane.
Thanks.
Okay. The minutes have been seconded by Commissioner Casasanta. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so we have 4 yays and 1 abstention by Commissioner Bashan.
Correct.
You have that, Ms. Gibbons?
Yes, I do. I'm sorry. I had to unmute. Yep, I have that.
Okay, thank you. Just get it for the record. Thank you.
You're
Okay, the
welcome.
minutes pass. Moving on to new business. Application 2020-08, 148 Winslow Drive for grading the upland review area by owner applicant Michael Pitkin, 148 Winslow Drive, Newton, Connecticut, 06111.
And
Come forward.
Yes, I'm here.
I will give you a brief overview before he starts, Andreas. And then James can put that drawing up as well for Winslow if he'd like. I got a call from a neighbor about some activity in this individual's yard. And I went out there and no one was around at that time. There was evidence of some grading. So I had sent him a letter. As soon as he got the letter, he got in touch with me. He was explaining to me what he was trying to do. He realized that there was a small waterway down in the corner of his property. He didn't realize about the buffer area. So we had a discussion about that, a little education about, wetlands and upland review area. But his intention was he was basically moving material around within the regulated area from one side to another to make his rear yard a little more level. We also had a discussion about future installation of an above ground pool that he had wanted to put more within the regulated area. And our discussion, he's actually going to pull it out and put it in that little notch that you see there at some point in the future, not this year, I believe. So he's restored the area, he seeded it, he installed silt fence, and so he's here to get the permit for the grading. And then going forward, if this pool does fall within the regulated area, he will, get that as well at some point. So this is what he is here for this evening. He's been very amenable to anything I've asked him to do so far. I was also out there with the town engineer at one point and looking at it because the chairman, Mr. Sedil, wanted to know if the grading was going to affect the hydrology in any way, and the town engineer said absolutely not. So here we are today. So I guess Mr. Pitkin can discuss a little bit more about his project, and then you guys can ask him questions going forward.
He needs to state his name and address for the record.
My name is Michael Pitkin. I live on 148 Winslow Drive.
Thank you.
As Eric said, I was taking soil from one side of the property, which was sloped down to the other side, was taking some soil from the high side of the property to the lower side of the property to level it out. All the areas that I was affecting were existing grass areas in the backyard. And at the time, before I got the letter from Eric, I did not know I was in an uplands review area. I knew that there was possibly some of the brook was in the far bottom corner of my property. But I did not know that uplands areas existed. At one point, I did go to the town hall when we first bought the house. I asked the building department for a plot plan. They gave me a plot plan. I asked if there were any restrictions on the property. The secretary said none that she knew of. That was all she had on the property. So I did not know that there was restrictions on the property. And it was a surprise to me when I got the letter in the mail. And as Eric said, as soon as I received the letter, I called him, made an appointment for him to come out and discuss what was going on. And I ceased the project that was going on.
A question, Mr. Pitkin. So where exactly on the map would this, well, first of all, how would you describe the perimeter on the north side? We have wetland line per town map. That's a wooded area that's shown there. That's a wooded area along that upper line.
Where's that there? I'm sorry.
Somebody was moving his hand. I can't.
I think Mike, they're talking about the wetland line back there.
Down in the, okay, I'm sorry.
Yep, and I think they just want to know, is it wooded, is it shrubs, is like you described, the area where you were working was a lawn area, and then farther back, you can discuss.
Yes, it's wooded in the back area. I cannot see the brook from where we are. It drops off pretty tremendously down to the brook. I actually hadn't gone down and seen the brook. I've been here for 2 years, and after I got the letter, I took a walk down there to actually see the part of the brook that was on the property. But it is pretty much past that 80-foot line where the area of disturbance is wooded from there back.
So basically, if I can just interject here, where you see the silt fence on that line, there's woods behind that silt fence down to the brook. And he did not remove any trees. There was one damaged tree from an old lightning strike that was there, that was in the upland review area near a shed, and that was taken down. The stump is still there.
Yeah, it actually had fallen. It was eaten, I think by black ants or something, and it had fallen on the house this time last year.
I see basically on the lines here, the backyard there sort of slopes down into the left into that upper hand corner. We see
Yes.
those steep lines there in the upper left-hand corner.
Yes, correct.
So my question relative to the hydrology, is there anything there to slow the water down? Obviously, you have a steep slope. You go from 78 down to 74, and it tilts over to the left. Any long-term erosion control there? Obviously, we get a lot of rainstorms, heavy rains. You have a grassy area, but you have quite a bit of runoff. Some of it'll go, most of it, I would think, based on the grading, on the slope of the topography of the land, it's just going to slope into that area. What type of vegetation is in there just to slow that water down going into the wetland? Or is there a concern for long-term erosion there?
There's not much there. It's just wooded. There's not a lot of vegetation.
That would be my only recommendation. Yeah, we want to have some of that water percolate down into the soil, into the earth, versus running off straight into the wetland. That would be my only question. That's why I asked that of Eric. Is there something that to slow that water down, make a recommendation to have long-term erosion control? Obviously, the roots the roots eventually get eroded over time through flows from the runoff. That's my only concern in the area. Something we can improve to slow that water down before it goes down. Can we percolate before it all runs down? It's going to eventually go to the wetland, into the stream. But that's the only area that's sensitive, because it is a very steep slope by your lines there. That's a pretty steep downslope. Am I correct?
Correct. Are you talking like down near the brook itself?
I'm right here.
Or
See
just-
upland line per town map. You see there that little line and the double dots.
Yes.
I mean, you have your slope, you have your grading there, but it appears that the slope goes down and to the left. If I'm running water, I want to go into that corner and then
Correct.
down into the wetland, right? If I'm a
Yes.
water, right? So that's my only concern, is that could there be long-term erosion if there's not enough vegetation to stabilize the embankment there?
If I can point out, Commissioner Sedil, I've been out there. It's kind of a heavy canopy down there, so there isn't a lot of grass. There's some small shrubs back in there as you get closer to the brook. And I believe that Mr. Pitkin was also amenable to potentially planting some plants along the edge there, some, perhaps some blueberry or something of that nature, the flora and fauna And that would help remediate some of what you're talking about.
Is the applicant acquiesced to that request? Can we have a list or something in the plan or just a little table added to the drawing here that
Absolutely.
that will be done in the near future or when the time is right to, as a condition to have that part of the plot stabilized?
Yes, I'll do some native plantings
you.
back there. If Eric has a list of those type of plants, I have no issues whatsoever with doing that.
Yeah, I can get that, and we will we'll make that a condition when we go to vote at the next month, perhaps. And we'll plant them at the correct time of year, et cetera.
The only other thing I will add, is there anything stockpiled in that area, in that upland review area, some timbers, branches, or maybe some sort of
I have,
paving blocks or anything like that?
I do have a wood pile back there from the oak tree that fell. That's in the upland review area, and I have some bluestone back there, pile back there.
Could that be moved out into some another portion closer to the house or to the, out of that wooded area?
Yes, I can move is it okay if I leave yes, it can. That's fine. Yes, I can move it out.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
I will open up to the commissioners, all the comments that I had. Thank you. I'll open it up. Bear with me now. I'll go to Commissioner Clark. I'll go to you first. How's that? If you have any-
Sure. You can hear me? I just, I assume that the trees are, this is addressed to Eric, since he probably would notice that these trees sound like they've been longstanding and probably are what's keeping the brook, the slope under control at this point in time. And that sounds promising to me, trying to picture it. But can you show me on the map again where the trees begin?
Basically where you see the silt fence line,
Yep.
anything going down towards the brook, down to the left, that's all wooded, and it gets a little more heavily wooded as you get down towards the brook. And like I said, you're not getting a whole lot of sunlight through there. So, you do have some bare spot ground areas anyway, but you do have a lot of underbrush, and, a lot of these trees are, minimum of 8 inches and up.
Yeah, they sound like, that sounds like something that might be doing a lot of natural stabilization anyway. So that sounds good to me.
All right. I'll go to Commissioner Bashan next.
Oh, did I have my hand up? I did want to speak,
go-
but I would like, I didn't know if I had my hand up, and I was looking for the feature of where to even raise my hand. So, but I'll speak now if I can.
Go.
Okay. How much fill was brought in here?
There was no fill brought in. It was all
Just grading?
from the property, correct?
Okay.
Yeah, it's
So-
basically moving material around within the same area.
So from the right side to the left side, let's say?
Correct, yes.
So you tried to level it off. That'll slow the water down a little bit by itself. I was just wondering why, and this is for Eric, I guess, how the upland review line has a 90-degree bend in it. It's a little strange.
It's just the nature of the way the other wetland line goes off the property.
Okay.
It kicks the other way on both sides as well.
Okay. My only other comment was regarding the use of the property in the upland review area. Andreas mentioned, to move things out of there, but I mean, we have to allow, I think we have to allow, or I think it's allowed, the accessory use of the property that's not a construction activity or like storing firewood or things like that. Is that something that we shouldn't allow in a upland review area? That'd just be my only comment.
It's, what triggers a wetland permit is the disturbance of soil or deposition of material.
Mhm.
We've had a couple cases in the past since I've been here dealing with piles of firewood, and they typically have not been pursued. It's been discussed with the homeowner, and,
I mean,
it is what.
Yeah, I'm sorry. A stack of firewood is different than a pile of compost. I mean, so that's what I'm saying. If a stack of firewood, if you're going to use it, you're going to, add to it and take it out. But I understand what you're saying. Anywhere you go in town, you can see people who probably similar to this don't realize they're in an upland review area and they have a compost pile, or even worse yet, they go across the street where it's not even their property and they're using it as a compost pile. So we see that all around town. So.
Right. So it's really up to you guys if you want to pursue the firewood issue, to have them remove it. That's, like I said, I can't think of a case where we've technically done that before.
Does the applicant want to comment on that? How big is this stack? Is the canopy moved out of closer to the house or beyond on the other side of that silt fence line that you have here?
I think that was
to
for
Mr.
you, Mike.
Pitkin.
I'm sorry. I can move the wood pile on the other side of the silt fence. I have no problem with that. I just don't want to put it too close to the house for bugs or, if there's
Yes,
anything
understood.
in it.
I think something's there. There's some space there to move that forward, for the edge of the property, just to get it out
Sure.
of there and,
Just out of the wooded area.
Yes,
I have no
yes.
problem with that.
I think it's
I
reasonable.
think that's fair.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Bashan, was there anything else?
Just one more observation. The silt fence was put in at the request of the town, Eric?
Correct. Yeah. When I went out there and had the discussion with him, because it was recently graded. So it was just, soil material. He actually had it hydro seeded within a couple of days when I was out there, and he installed the silt fence, and it currently it's germinating fairly well, I believe.
Yeah. And how long would that normally be required to stay there?
Typically, we like it there until the grass is germinated. So we just don't want any soils migrating down there. That's all.
Yeah,
So-
I was just thinking along what Andreas' line of slowing down erosion, if the applicant didn't mind, if it's not unsightly from his house, to leave it there as long as possible, and that will, those things eventually clog up and really slow water down. I know we've had this argument even about that before, if silt fences slow water down, but they do eventually, especially when they get debris built up behind them, so.
Absolutely. I'm sure he's probably amenable, because I think he's doing some other stuff up near the house outside of the regulated area as well. So.
That's okay. I'll leave the silt fence up.
I have nothing more.
Okay, thank you. Next I'll go to Commissioner Casasante. Do you have any comments for the applicant? Questions?
Had to unmute my mic. No, I think that most of my concerns were covered by you, Mr. Chairman. And from what I've heard of the discussion and what the applicant has indicated, I think that we have a solid plan of action going forward to protect the wetland, the upland review area, and mitigate any damage to either of them. So I'm happy with what I heard.
Thank you. Next, Commissioner Laviere, do you have any comments or questions for the applicant?
No comments or questions. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going next to Commissioner Ancona. Do you have any questions?
No questions.
All right.
Thank you.
I think that covers anyone. So I think we have a few action items, 2 conditions maybe you want to add to this application, Mr. Hinckley, but I think we can table this and look at the formal permit at the next meeting, at the August meeting.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Pitkin.
I'll get in touch with you, Mr. Pitkin,
Thank you
and have
very
a
much.
discussion about plants and whatnot.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Hold on, I'm gonna come, hold on just a second. Can you still hear me?
We can.
All right, moving on to item 6, old business. Application 2020-01, 68 Deming Street for subdivision within a regulated area. Owner applicant Roger Pickham, 6 Judge Lane, Newington, Connecticut, 06111. Is
Yes,
someone representing the applicant here?
Yeah, if I can speak to this real quick before Mr. Bongiovanni gives his presentation. There's been just a couple of points that have been brought up. This is under old business typically only because it was on new business on a couple of different occasions, and one meeting was canceled due to COVID. Another one, the applicant backed out of at the last minute because his drawings weren't ready. However, just so we're all clear, there is not going to be a wetland permit issued for this site because they are not disturbing anything in the regulated area. However, the commission does have to acknowledge a subdivision on property that contains regulated area, i.e. the wetlands and the buffer. So that is really all it's going to be, is an acknowledgement for the commission, because TPZ can't act until they have that acknowledgement. And this is in this is by statute and TPZ reg that we have to do this. So going forward, I think Mr. Bongiovanni is going to give a short presentation on this item, and you can ask him some questions, but really there's nothing that we're going to condition or vote on. I've already had a discussion with the town planner, Craig Minor, as to the conservation easement. And TPZ is amenable to that, and I believe they've already requested that. And Mr. Bongiovanni can discuss that as well. So really, this is just a presentation, so for our edification and to move forward. So if you guys have any other questions or feelings about it, I would suggest you go to the TPZ meeting where they may present. I believe maybe even tomorrow, I'm not sure. Anyway, so I'm done. So if Alan would like to speak, and James can put up whatever slides he needs.
Thank you, Eric. Good evening, members of the commission, staff. For the record, my name is Alan Bongiovanni, 170 Payne Road, Newington. I'm a licensed land surveyor. I'm representing Calvin, Roger, and Donna Peckham in this application for a subdivision. As Eric had stated, there is a wetland on the corner of the property. It's actually a man-made farm pond. As if James could go to our grading sheet, we can have a graphic. You can see where that is in the lower right-hand corner. A quick Reader's Digest version of the property. It's 12 acres in an R20 zone. It's bounded on the north by Griswoldville Road, on the east by Deming Street. Our proposal is to construct an 850 feet road opposite from Deming Farm Drive, terminating in a cul-de-sac and allowing 18 single-family residential lots to be built, similar to the Barn Hill neighborhood, or to the north, the Waverly neighborhood. The light blue in the lower corner of the property is the actual pond. If you look at that area, there's boxes around it. The wetlands actually parallels that within a few feet of the pond. James, if you could zoom in on lot 11. Thank you. So the pond is light blue. The wetland flags and the wetland line is right around that. You see just above the lot 11 line is a dashed line. That's the 100-foot regulated area. All our work is going to be done outside of that area. Everything north of the tree line, the dark green is our wooded areas. Everything north of that is hayfield. It's hayed a couple times a year. It's been that way for as long as I can remember, probably 40 or 50 years. Most of the water that comes to this area actually bypasses this wetland area and then runs to the southwest and then to the neighboring properties to the south. Again, we are not proposing any work within this regulated area. One of the comments that came from planning and zoning was consideration of putting a conservation easement on this area to protect the wooded area and the pond. We've hired Jen Benno from Soil Science and Environmental Services, who reviewed the property, reviewed the conditions around the pond, And actually, she had recommended that it be a 50-foot regulated area. That 50-foot allows all the wooded area to be protected in perpetuity. And beyond that, up to the 100-foot, the commission still has the right to regulate anything that happens there in the future. It is our proposal, it is the developer's proposal that nothing be done in that area and be left as a wooded area and the upland review area left as a hayfield. I think that concludes my presentation.
Giovanni, thank you. I have a few questions. Relative to the easement itself, everything I see here in dark green will be in that easement? When you talk about 50-foot and the 100-foot buffer, is this dark green area included, or is this more than what's going to be in the easement?
No, if you look at just below the label of lot 11, there is a line that has angles with dashes on it, longer dashes. That's the limits of the conservation easement. We did it 50-foot parallel to the actual wetlands line as flagged.
Okay, I see. Now, the whole point of this motion this evening is that for lots 10, 11, 12, maybe 13, maybe not, I have to pan over. At least on this view, it's 10, 11, 12. Whoever purchases that lot has to understand that that easement is there and that no structure can go within that 50-foot easement. And that's
Correct.
basically the purpose of the motion that we're going to consider this evening.
I could just mention, there is no easement on 12 and 13. It's only on 11 and 12.
10 and 11.
And 10 and 11, yeah.
10 and 11.
Yeah.
Fair enough. 10 and 11. Thank you for the correction there.
Yep.
But that's the purpose, the way of the motion this evening, is that the homeowners will have to acknowledge that, and that anything that is a restricted area. And that's basically what we're acknowledging on the development.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, language would be included in their deeds that there is this restriction on the property, as well as shown on the subdivision maps and the plot plans for the homeowners.
Okay. I got a question on the detention pond and the flow of the water. On the one in the earlier drawing, you show where the water flow is going, right? Down slope, okay? And I think the intent.
Excuse me.
Beg your pardon, Mr. Bongiovanni?
If James could go back to the whole grading plan and not this, so we could talk about that area. Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, so I see the arrows there, starting at lot 12. There's an arrow there, and there's like a squizzle. I assume that's a depression. Yes, there's a depression there, and another depression, like a stair step. Is that, am I interpreting that correctly?
Those contours indicate that it's a swale being created, so that we direct all the
Inboard.
surface runoff. Right.
Inboard swale.
Right. And
So
go ahead.
So you're going through this triple or quadruple stair step before you get to the detention basin, correct?
Yes.
Now, I guess in an ideal world, the water will flow down that route into the detention basin. And then what is the capacity of that? What I'm really getting at is, in an ideal world, it'll capture the water for a certain amount of time. And then if that's overflowed, it's going to go down into, where does that water go, number one? Number two, can the percolation of whatever that water is in there, could that go into the groundwater and go into the wetland? You follow through hydrology, could that water seep down instead of, if we're really at a heavy storm, instead of going to the west or to the left in this case, could that go into the wetland that's immediately down on the bottom, on the south side here? Yeah, and beyond that, I know, because that stream goes down, it goes past on Waverly, I think. What's that street's called, Waverly?
It's Winding Brook Lane, and it actually traverses south of
Winding Brook, excuse me.
Yeah.
How does that hydrology work? Okay, you're not going to impact the flow, should stay on this development. But if it goes in, seep down and the water table affect what's going on in the wetland and what's going on in Winding Brook? How does that all work?
So
Can you describe the drainage?
certainly. One of the features of this piece of property is in the southwest corner, we actually have some very permeable soils. Our initial design was to create an infiltration basin. We did permeability tests. We did several borings at different occasions. We've had it inspected by Max Welty. Our town engineer visited the site several times during some of this work. Our initial design was to have an overflow, but basically have it as a basin that infiltrated into the ground. The town engineer's take on how that should be designed was such that it didn't make sense to continue to have it as a retention basin that percolated into the ground. So we designed a traditional detention basin with an outlet that's in an existing town of Newington drainage easement just to the south on property of, it says Nelson and Patricia Feliciano. We have an outlet in that area. But the way we've designed this is that we know a certain percentage of all rainfall will percolate into the ground. We have some decent sand and gravel material in that area. So we've designed it as if it didn't have it to meet the requirements of the town engineer. But in all practicality, it will function. It will provide water quality. It will provide groundwater recharge. It's a really neat little a low impact design, if you will. But it's going to be handled as a detention basin. It will be metered out. What doesn't flow into the ground, percolate into the ground, will be metered out. We did test the groundwater. Groundwater was in excess of 18 feet below the grade. We didn't find any signs of mottling or staining in the soil that would indicate seasonal high groundwater higher than that. And what we've provided in case of some catastrophic event, we provided overland relief that water would go out to Deming Street, and that's at the west side. It looks like a little driveway there, and that actually is a service driveway. If maintenance had to be done, a service way, I should call it. It's not going to be a paved driveway, but that provides overland relief. So if this was to fail, which I couldn't imagine how, but if it was to fail, it could flow out to Deming Street and then go down towards the brook and save any damage to property.
So no impact to the adjacent. What I'm asking here is that further down on the other side on this flow where this stream goes, it does not go on this property here, but it's on Winding Brook. There's going to be no impact. Are we going to see increased water, have catastrophic storm? Will that, and then in turn, that flows into that other development. I think it's Newington Ridge behind there.
Yep.
It goes over underneath the street and then in circles around and winds up in that grove of trees that are dead, that marshy area that's just adjacent to the Berlin Turnpike.
Yep.
Is there going to be any impact to that from a hydrology standpoint?
It's not, because we've designed this system. Forget the benefits of infiltration because we didn't take credit for that. But we've designed this as the detention basin so that it will meter the flow out in all storms between 2 and 100-year event at a lesser rate than it does today as an open field. It will be reduced significantly. And our drainage computations that were submitted to the town engineer support that.
Correct. They're currently being reviewed.
What was that, Mr. Hinckley?
I said they're current, I believe they've finished comments, and I don't know if Alan's addressed everything or if they have any more comments, but it has been reviewed by engineering staff and the town engineer.
Okay. Those are the questions that I had. I'm going to ask Commissioner, go around again. Commissioner Clark, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I have a question for, I believe more for Eric and for the applicant's representation. And I have this statement. I assume this was that we're going to state about that. Eric, did you distribute this to the entire commission?
No, that's just your motion, if,
Okay.
or when you guys decide to, and guys can chew on that if you like.
Great, okay, so I won't refer to it, but what I wanted to ask is, and I do appreciate Mr. Bongiovanni informing us of what will show up in the deed. Because we've had, I believe in the last 12 months, 2 circumstances that involved conservation easements that either were not understood by the homeowner, or in one case, a business owner. I wonder when language like that appears on a deed, because we're just, again, going forward and just making a statement, knowing that the applicant is within the letter of the law. Does it make any sense to, in addition to our statement, I'd just like to figure out a way to connect with homeowners. This is a general statement about conservation easements in a way that will not cause A, violations, and B, disappointment on the end of the homeowner. Is what I'm saying make any sense? I don't know if adding language to the statement that we're going to make makes any sense, or is this the way it's always been forever and we just have to count on it working? And we've seen circumstances in which it doesn't work and it doesn't seem like there's much recourse.
Here's what should happen, Kathleen, and here's typically what will happen. The developer is going to grant us the conservation easement. When they sell any of those lots that contain the conservation easement, the buyers, through their attorneys or title companies, should be made aware at a closing of the restriction of the property, i.e. the conservation easement, and typically that always happens. Now, over time, people forget or they choose to ignore, and they want what they want and they do things. That's where we, kind of get into the thing. But typically, I don't think there's much else we can do, because, and it's also noted on the deed that there is a restriction, and they'll refer to the conservation easement. So they're aware of it. They should be told that they're closing by their attorney and or their title company.
Okay, thank you.
Interject. I sympathize with Commissioner Clark. There was a year or so ago an application on Vincent Drive. I remember Commissioner Bashan was familiar with. And the language was pretty clear on the easement on that property. And they wanted to put a structure inside the easement. And there's really nothing we can do. It was put in there by the abutting property owners. And it was pretty clear language that was not allowed per the easement, because that was with a condition to grant the sale of the property. And that homeowner lashed out on the commission publicly at us, that we're the bad guys. So I know where she was coming from. It was a very distasteful experience. It was a very nice lady, but the language was what the language was. And it was a very distasteful event. And that's why Commissioner Clark was bringing that up. And that's why I brought it, was my first things I asked you, Mr. Bongiovanni. Was that incident, was that the reason why? So I'm sensitive to what Commissioner Clark is saying.
I'm
Go
not
ahead,
sure where I am.
Continue. Commissioner, continue.
And the other is Lewis Street. That's the other conservation easement issue that has come to mind, in which extensive landscaping was done that bore no resemblance to leaving things as they should be. And we kind of inherited that down the road as well.
Do you have anything else, Commissioner Clark?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Was there anything else you wanted to add for Mr. Bongiovanni?
I'm not sure. Did you just hear me?
I did.
Okay, cool. I'm sorry. I couldn't tell if you heard me or not. So
Yes, I did.
Was there any further question, Commissioner Clark?
No.
I'm going to move on.
No, as I said, I just thought I
Okay.
would raise it
All right.
since here we have it in real time before these homeowners exist. And now I understand what will show up on the deed, and hopefully they will pay attention.
Thank you. We'll go to Commissioner Bashan next.
Just a couple of comments. One of them is kind of an anecdotal support of what Mr. Bongiovanni said about the percolation in the area. If you notice up on the corner, there are gravel pits in that area. So the soil there is definitely different from the rest of the more leveler part of the town. Let's put it that way. So I tend to accept that statement that there is better percolation in that site than there is in, let's say, the center of town or whatever. Less clay and more of the bank run gravel type material. That's why they dug it, because it was a valuable material. The only other one was the issue about and I know we don't have any control over this anyway, but where he mentioned that the upland review area would remain a hayfield. I don't know, I doubt there's anything that would prevent the future homeowners from mowing it and maintaining it, so. And again, I appreciate that we have no control over that anyway, so. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Bashan. Move on next to Commissioner Casasan. Did you have any questions for the applicant?
No, Mr. Chairman, you covered everything, and Commissioner Clark covered everything I was concerned about.
Thank you. Move on to Commissioner Lavariere.
Yes, I have questions about lots 11 and 10 specifically. I went down to this area on back, I believe it was in March or in April, and I walked through the whole area, and there's a slope that goes down towards this wetland area that appears to go through most, dramatically through lots 10 and 11. And I'm concerned about the placement of the houses that may not be within this regulated area, but whether or not they're going to affect the flow of water that could go down into this waterway. And I'm not sure that if I was provided anything that addressed this, because there's 15 pages or so of materials. We're looking at page 5 here, but I'm concerned, I'm not an environmental scientist by any stretch, but I'm concerned about whether structures on 11 and 12 pose any threat to the integrity of the water area.
So the reason we did sheet number 5 of 15 for a display tonight is because it shows the contouring. It shows the existing contouring and the proposed grading. And the light lines, the dashed lines in a lighter color are the existing contours, and the heavy lines that extend from the houses and such with the boxes that have numeric labels for their elevation are the proposed. And the way the water flows, it goes in a southerly direction, but as it gets beyond or to the back of lot 11 and in lot 10, that water kind of turns and goes in a southwesterly direction. There will be some water from the regulated area and some of the rear yards that will go towards this pond as it does today. But the most of the area that we're regrading is going to be directed similar to the natural flow so that it bypasses the pond. We're not directing any additional water to this, and we're probably reducing in some small amount the amount that flows to it. You talked about the sloping. It's a very steep slope. It's not 100 feet high, but it's 8 or 10 feet at worst, or at the highest point north of the pond. It's a very thick vegetated area. It's very hard to traverse, especially this time of the year. It's well stabilized. It's been supporting that bank, that existing vegetation for decades without any erosion or problems there. So we're very confident in the way we've designed this. I know we worked very closely with the engineering department on the surface runoff and how we were to direct that. And I'm very confident that what we have will have no degradation on the quality of the water in that pond. That's a spring-fed pond. That was dug as a farm pond to provide water for the farming operations.
This is Commissioner Laverier again. So you said that you don't think that it would produce more water in the area. Do you think that it would reduce the water in the area?
The watershed is probably slightly reduced because from those areas where we're grading around the houses and where people are apt to fertilize, we want to direct that water and those lawn areas away from the pond, so we don't get, undue amounts of algae bloom and things like that from too much nitrogen, which comes from the fertilizer. So that's why we've shown the swale along the back of lots 13 and 14. So that water will go to the detention basin. And that water is going to, for the most part, and in most events, is going to percolate into the ground and have natural purification.
Right, and then as Mr. Bongiovanni pointed out, that is something the engineering department looks at as we do look at the impact of the wetland. And with the use more now of fertilizers for grass here, some of the water does get directed away, yes. But that's for the betterment of the pond overall.
Again, this pond is not fed by, there is some surface contribution, but it's spring fed. It doesn't freeze in the winter. It comes out of the earth.
That's all the questions I have at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We'll also finally go to Commissioner Ancona. Do you have any questions for the applicant?
No, I have no questions. All set.
Thank you. I think I covered. Go ahead.
Commissioner Sedil, I'll just point out that the attendee has their hand raised. This isn't typically a time when they would speak. So I will let you, I assume they have a question about the subdivision, but that's up to you how you want to handle it.
There's someone on the from the outside.
Yes, the attendee.
Okay, can we willing to entertain that person's question?
That's
Allow
up to
them to
you.
talk if you'd like.
Please proceed. Can you please identify yourself for the commission?
We're not quite there yet. I'm asking them if I can unmute them. So we have to get permission first. They're either not acknowledging or aren't able to.
Okay, Ms. Tinkley, I think we shall proceed.
Okay, so at this point, if you guys would like to make a motion to acknowledge the subdivision, that's, I believe I
All right.
gave some sample language to Secretary Clark.
So I'll turn it over to Secretary Clark. Do you have a motion to submit to the commission regarding the easement, the subdivision, excuse me?
Unmute. Okay, so you can hear me right now?
Yes,
Oh, good. Yes, I have the language. Would you like me to read it?
please.
Or are we making a motion first?
Yes, I'd like to have a motion to the secretary to acknowledge the regulated area in this subdivision.
Well,
And
I'm gonna
second
make I'll make a motion. And now I read my motion. The commission hereby acknowledges that the application for the subdivision titled Peckham Farms has been received by the Conservation Commission and the TPZ. Any future intrusions into the regulated area contained within that subdivision shall require a review by the wetland agent to determine the potential necessity of a wetland permit.
Thank you. Do I have a second from the commission?
I'll second it. Andreas, John Bashan here.
Thank you.
But
Seconded by
may I make a
Sec-
comment, or is this a proper time to not make a
Second.
comment?
Seconded by Commissioner Prashant. Discussion. Commissioner Prashant.
And just stop me if I'm going in the wrong direction here, but I was just thinking about this attendee who was hoping to speak, and I could imagine how frustrating if we only had one person from the public and they did want to make a comment. They should understand that we have little control over this, like, as we've been instructed by Eric to begin with. But I would imagine it would be frustrating if they did attend the meeting and really felt something important to say and couldn't say it. So I'd rather give them all the opportunity to try to, if we could try again to see if they still wanted to make a comment before we moved on. And again, I don't know the procedure if we're already past that and we can't do that now anyway, so.
Any other comments on the motion?
I believe Commissioner Lavier has his hand raised.
Commissioner Lavier?
Yes, just a point of reference that I do feel that, especially with this meeting being conducted via Zoom, and that the meeting notice was posted to the town website at the last minute, I do feel it's worth noting that public participation is certainly at a minimum this evening. Thank you.
So at this point, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye, Richard Laverier.
We have an against from any abstentions? So we have 4 in favor. Commissioner Lavariere is against the motion. Motion passes.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to the second item of old business. I check my notes here. Yeah, internal rules and regulations, old business, hold on.
I
Item
did
B,
not,
internal rules and committees, yes.
I did not meet with John, but I vow to do so in the future.
If I may.
Commissioner Bashan.
You should have seen, and I think Kathleen was part of that email. I did share my quick and simple edit of what I was hoping to accomplish. And I hope I did send it to Kathleen as well. I'm sure I sent it to you and Eric, or I believe I did. And it was a very simple edit.
Yes, John, I did see that.
Okay.
And it sounded like discussion was going to happen, so that's why I didn't go any further.
Mhm.
Typically what you do with these types of committees is you get everything ready and then you present whatever the changes are, however minimal, and then they're just discussed at this level. I remember seeing something, honestly, we've been a little crazy here. So I don't have it in front of me. I know it was a very minor change. If you want to discuss it tonight, that's fine, or you can resend it to me and I can distribute it to all the commissioners for next month's meeting. Whatever you guys want to do, so.
I'll resend it, but if I could also just bring up that there was some, and I also asked that this could be discussed as well, if that's even necessary. It may be already, and I think Attorney Ancona was going to look at the rules even, and I don't know if he ever got back to you on that. But
I did send him the copy he requested. I have not heard back from him.
So let's give it a little more time. But I had questioned in that email to you and Andreas that possibly the change is not even needed. If it may be already in our, it may be, the opportunity to speak may already be there, so. That's it for me. Thank you.
So we'll table this for now and put it on the agenda for the August meeting. Did I hear that?
Thank you.
We'll get that distributed, everybody on the same page.
Sounds good.
Thank you. All right. Moving on to item 6, public participation on non-agenda items, each speaker limited to 2 minutes. Is there anyone online who wishes to speak?
We have no attendees online any longer.
Okay. That being said, item 8, communications and reports. Item A, agent communications. Mr. Hinckley, do you have anything to report to the commission?
Just a few things to touch on. As I said, last couple months, still been busy. I did, last month we did 3 agent approvals. One at 43 Harris Drive for a deck in the URA. Another at 1852 Main Street for an above ground pool in the URA. And lastly, at 98 Mountain View Drive for an above ground pool, deck and patio in the URA. And currently I'm working with another one on Mountain View Drive for Carriage Hill Drive, I'm sorry, for a deck. Next item of information about the Mill Pond tennis courts. It was brought up last meeting by Commissioner Paskovich, I believe, that wanted Parks and Rec to install silt fence or straw wattle around the tennis courts, the clay courts that were within the regulated area. I had a discussion with the town engineer, and he stated that it would be impractical for maintenance type of issues to have that installed there where they cut grass, etc. As far as the LID being removed from the TPZ regs, I haven't heard anything else.
If I back up, Mr. Hinckley, this is the chairman speaking, just about the Mill Pond. My thought, the only thing we can do is when the next contract comes up, that we include some sort of task in that contract to have them inspect the embankment to take out brush clippings and so that. That's all I would ask at this point, is that when they do the regular mowing, that the embankment is inspected for unnatural debris that doesn't need to be there. It's not natural to the ecosystem there. I would add that to the contract to have some, to have an inspection when the grass is being cut in that area. Is that possible?
That's all Parks cuts all that. So I don't know what their schedule is. That's not on contract. So I couldn't say. I can have a discussion with the supervisor to at least go have a look over the bank with him. And if there's anything that I see that I think should be removed, we can have a discussion on it. I can just ask him to remove it when they have time and effort and manpower to be able to do that.
Make that recommendation for me. That would be my part of the care of the area, that we can make that clarification if they can do an inspection. They see, unfortunately, we have people who are not sensitive or respect the area.
Okay.
That is on a regular basis. They can do that, per their regular cutting schedule.
Okay, I will do that.
Thank you.
Back to my, as far as LID, I haven't heard anything else about the removal from the TPZ regs. I believe they have a meeting tomorrow night. I don't know when the public hearings have been set for that topic. So if and when I hear anything, I will let you guys know if you're still interested, or you guys can watch the agendas as well to see. The last item I have for discussion, a memo was distributed by the town manager to all boards and commissions. I apologize for not getting a copy out to you. Some of you may have heard about it or seen it. I will email you guys a copy in the morning. Basically, it's discussions about economic development in the town and how we have to try and move forward due to COVID and everything, build the grand list, et cetera. So basically, he is asking all boards and commissions to, and I quote, to reduce roadblocks, unnecessary regulations, rules, and obstacles that result in the delay of applicants seeking local approvals. James has been good enough to put that memo up for us. But like I said, I will email you each copy tomorrow. He just wanted us to, the staff people, to make commissions aware and move forward. As I explained to him, I said, well, we have stuff that falls under state statute, so we have other rules to look at as well. So that's all I have for my report at this point in time. I can answer any questions if you have anything on what I talked about, or moving on.
Okay, seeing none, let's move on to item 8B, invasive plants. Commissioner Clark, do you have any updates?
Yes, a very short one, and that is that I'm not sure if I'm a member or just on the Facebook page of Cheshire Land Trust in an attempt to learn something about land trusts. Plus, they do a great job on getting volunteers, etc. And they were looking for somebody to make short videos educational videos. And I said, gee, I could do that. So I sent them a sample of making a video about invasive plants that I shot in my backyard. It was 4 minutes long. And so I'm now like on their group to do something like that going forward. So I will report anything that I do for them, but I also wondered if that was something we might be interested in the way future, since so much is going on right now, as an educational thing, whether it would be on a town website or if we would ever get more active with outreach, because some of the conservation commissions that I've seen at like Kakiwick actually have more, again, outreach, let's say something at Extravaganza. Again, this isn't the year to necessarily do it unless it was an online presence. So at some point, if you'd like, I could share the video that I actually made. And it was kind of fun. And I just went in the backyard and did it. And I had tons of invasive plants in my very own backyard. And they thought it was good. And so I'll be making short videos for them eventually, just using my cell phone. That's it.
Yes. Very flexible these days with what you do with the phones, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Get it on Instagram like that. Before my daughter gets home, it's already there.
Amazing. I had some
It's home from the
problems.
party.
Yeah, so I'll try to see if I can figure out a way to send it to everybody, just to show you a thought of, is there a way to be in the public's eye? And I think if you're in the public's eye, not just about invasive plants, maybe things like, what is a conservation easement? You know, this week's topic is, what is a conservation easement? For example, just to educate the public.
Good.
That's it,
Thank you.
for real.
Sounds good.
Moving on to item 8C, vernal pools. Commissioner Paskowitz could not make it this evening, but I do have one item. Where do we stand? Anybody get a chance to take a look at the revisions on vernal pools to the town regulation? Are there any comments, or has anyone had a chance? I know the weather's nice, poolside, flipping through the regs. Is there any comments or feedbacks from the rest of the commission?
I did not review anything, John Bashan here.
They were all emailed to you right after last month's meeting, so you should have them.
I'll have to
I
go
should?
back.
I believe I did.
Yeah,
The
I don't
comments?
remember, but I'll look. Sorry.
I believe the adjusted regs. I think I sent them out with the changes in red.
Yes, they were sent out.
Okay.
They were sent out, but there were no comments or feedback
No,
or any
I never got any correct.
red lines or markups. Okay. Well, we'll table that for next month, give him another chance. All right. If anybody doesn't get them, let Mr. Hinckley know and we'll get them to you. Okay.
I'm just gonna raise my hand here again for 1 second, just to
Commissioner
get
Bashan?
last words in before we adjourn. Just an interesting thing I noticed with this is the whole Zoom thing, and you were mentioning, Chairman Andreas, that you could only see 3 attendees at a time. But if you just hover over the right side of the main frame there, the main pane, and then you'll see you have an option to slide that one way or the other, and you could open it right up and see everybody at once.
Let me try this.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
I don't see Mr. Ancona though. I don't see him.
Well, he
Mr.
might
Ancona.
have his camera off, but yeah.
Right.
No, I see Councilor Bedrenko. How are you?
Yeah, she's quiet tonight. Hi, Gail.
What's going on,
I see
guys?
everyone except Mr. There's Mr. Ancona. There he is. All right.
So just an interesting, little tip. I hope we don't
You
have
gotta
to
be
keep doing
curious
this.
sometimes. You gotta be curious.
I hope we don't have to keep doing it like this, though.
Okay. All right. Do I have item 9? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Really? Nobody wants to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Richard,
Moved by Commissioner Prashant. Do I have a second for Commissioner Lavariere?
yep, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Have a good night.
All right.
Thank
Good
you
night,
all.
See
everybody.
you next month.
Take care, everyone.
Aye.
Good night.